Okay.
Great.
Good morning. This is Renee Lenker with the Division of Teacher Certification Services and PDE. I first want to thank you for hopping over onto the new platform. We were having technical difficulties this morning, and we thank you for your patience, for sticking it out with us there and hopping onto this new platform. So what's going to happen is this is being recorded and it will be posted on the PDE website for those that may have missed the presentation. If there's anybody in your LEA that missed it because of the issues, we would we're going to be placing that on the website for everyone that was unable to jump on. So our presentation today is some updates, some information that many of you might know. There might be some things that you're going to be able to take away from this presentation, hopefully, things that even if you worked in the position of certifying officer, that you will learn today, even if you've done that, been provisioned in that role for a long time. So we're going to go through, this is our topics, CSPGs, new certificates, staffing, certificate validity, and emergency permits, and Act 82. We will also be giving you some information on Act 136 later on in the presentation. Next. First of all, what are the CSPGs? And they have been around forever, but we still have a lot of LEAs that do not use or not aware that these are out there. These are certification staffing policies and guidelines. We use the acronym CSPGs because it's obviously much easier to say than the long title. These are for public school educators and school entities. They contain information on the certification processes. So not only do they contain information on how to staff a classroom properly, but they also contain information on our processing of applications and the requirements thereof. They are easily found on the website under educators, certification, and then we have gone several years ago to a blue box concept. They would be under the box of staffing policies. So I encourage anyone out there, if you have any questions, to first visit the CSPGs and see if your answers are included in those. Next. There's new certificate areas. We are up and running with the computer science, 7 to 12, the school social worker certificate pre-K-12, and also the special education pre-K-12 is not currently available, but in anticipation, it will be available on January 1st, 2022. And I know when this first came out, it seemed like it was going to be forever, but it's quickly approaching and we will be able to issue that as of January 1st, this coming January 1st. And I know everyone is anxious for that change to occur. If you have staffing questions that cannot be answered in the CSPGs, Karen Turner is our staffing specialist, and she often participates with me in doing these presentations. Today, I have it whittled down to basically the use of TIMS and those things that a certifying officer would be able to use to make your job a little bit better on your end. So she's not with us today, but if you have any questions that are not answered, there is her email address. Also, she will go work with you back and forth through email. There might be some additional information she has to gather from you regarding the class that you want to teach in order for her to determine proper staffing for that classroom. So that's information you can just tuck away and keep her on your speed dial if you ever need her with your staffing questions. Next. Validity. And even after all of these years, there's still a lot of questions on the validity of a certificate. There is more information and details in CSPG number 3 level 1 into level 2. The validity of a level 1 is explained and described in CSPG number 3. Also, the requirements to obtain your level 2 and validity is clearly outlined in CSPG number 7. There's a lot of information in there, and that's where it will go into validity. And one of the things that continues to be of confusion is that a level 1 is not based on calendar years. That is Act 48 that is based on calendar years. The validity of a certificate is based on actual time served. So if you have someone who was issued a level 1 and never taught on that level 1 certificate, it's still valid for 6 years of service. That does not change. And where there is confusion is Act 48 runs on a 5-year calendar time frame. So if someone's issued their certificate and they are not teaching on it, as long as they're keeping their Act 48 current and valid, that certificate will remain a valid certificate that they can go out and be hired on. If you have someone that you fear may have taught their 6 years and their certificate has lapsed, there is a BEC out there on lapsed certificates, as well as there is a documentation worksheet for determining certificate validity. And this is what you would submit to PDE to actually get a official verification that their certificate is lapsed. And this is also very good in case it runs into union issues and so forth. If you have this validity check done by PDE that comes back to you and gives you in writing the actual time that that individual has served on their level 1 certificate, it is really the official response to how many years has this individual taught on this level 1. So that worksheet is on our website under fees and forms. It comes in here to our staff. Sometimes they have to gather a lot more information before they can make that determination, but they will be able to give you that official validity on that certificate if it's so many months left or if it has lapsed. Next. Level 1 to level 2. What are the requirements? The requirements are 3 years of satisfactory service, and just as we indicated, it's years of actual service, not calendar years. An induction, 24 post-baccalaureate credits, the recommendation, a good GMC, and citizenship, except for world languages. So let's just stop for a few minutes on the credit requirements. Again, this is indicated as 24 credits taken past the date of the bachelor's degree. So if you have someone who got a bachelor's degree and went back and did a master's or a post-bac certification program to get their certificate, those credits will count for them for level 2, as well as to get their certificate. And this is an area of confusion, even to those of you out there who have been working for many years. It's not necessarily 24 credits past the date that they got their certificate. That again is an Act 48 requirement. Act 48 credits have to be obtained after the date that the individual got certified. Level 1 to level 2 credits are credits taken past the date of their bachelor's degree. It's that plain and simple. There's nothing more to that. We explain that more under CSPG number 7, but that seems to be the most confusing part, is the years of service and also the credits. Next. And what service is acceptable to obtain their level 2? Again, in CSPG number 7, we have service broken out into 3 categories, and I did not list everything here because it's very lengthy. and their service that is mandatorily counted against their certificate, such as public school service with the IU, pre-K counts. There's a whole listing, but then there's a listing of optional service. In other words, this is service that if someone taught in a private school, there's a whole listing there as well, that the educator can choose to count that time towards their level 2, but they do not have to count it against the validity of their certificate. And then you have service that is not creditable at all, which would be service like on an emergency permit, service on their intern certificate. So there's a list there as well. If you've not visited the PDE website, I encourage you to go to the link that is on this PowerPoint, and she's going to actually pull it up, the website, so we can look at it together. Okay, do you want to go back a page under current PA educators? There you go. If you click on the link level 1 to level 2, we have broken out all of the requirements into individual boxes with a lot of information under each box for each requirement. And we've just added a very hopefully helpful link, calculating service. This is for individuals that have service that is a partial year or part-time. This will give you exact details on how to calculate all of that service. We have tables down below, which hopefully can be used to correctly calculate the years of service out. So we're hoping this is brand new. This just went up a couple weeks ago. We're hoping that this is very useful to you. So if you go back to the page with the blocks again, you'll also see a chart up in the left-hand corner. Valid versus, there you go. Valid versus active. And this is a chart that you can use to see the differences between validity and Act 48. It very clearly defines service years versus calendar years. It defines the credits that are required for each one. The one, validity, there is no notice sent to an educator because we have no idea, we cannot track their service, where under Act 48, a notice does go out to an educator because this is on calendar years. The penalty of not obtaining your level 1 after 6 years of service is your certificate lapses. The penalty for not completing your Act 48 is your certificate goes inactive. So these are two terms that are used to describe someone's certification that kind of gets used intermittently back and forth incorrectly. And so this very clearly lays everything out, what the differences are between the two. Also, if you go back to the box again, go back to the boxes, you will also see a checklist, which is really handy for educators. If they're gathering their things together, they can print out this checklist, and as they go along, they can check things off and get ready to send their documents into PDE. So what we recommend is sending this link out to all of your educators. Because of the amount of questions that we get in PDE, I do not know how many know that this is available, but a lot of their questions are answered right here before you even get started. So, which would eliminate their need to contact PDE. We have dwindling staff. With COVID, we've had 2 retirees, plus we have more coming up. So we encourage all of your staff to look at this page online to see if their questions can be answered. And we feel that, 95% 5% of their questions can be answered right here with all of these links. So now we will go back to our PowerPoint. Next slide. This is again showing you the chart that I just showed you that's on the website. I'm showing you that here. Again, this is very helpful to you and also your educators. Now I want to take a little bit of time to go over work affirmations. This is probably the most difficult section for an LEA to fill out. And therefore, when we review level 2 applications, this is the area that causes the most confusion and causes the most delay. So I want to go over a few hints with you, a few tips with you. When you get a work affirmation, this information is being pulled from the TIMS reports. And the information only goes back to as far as those reports were being submitted. So the information that you're looking at is not complete, and it may not even be accurate, depending on how it was submitted. So when an educator first looks at their level 2 application under their work affirmations, they have the ability to update, edit, and correct that information themselves. Many times they don't realize that. They don't follow the user guide for submitting an application, which explains all that, and they just go ahead and submit it, and the information is not complete and it's not accurate. The next desk where it stops is yours. When you do the work affirmations, you also have the ability to update, edit, and correct any of that information that is not correct or complete under the work affirmations. Once that information is submitted to PDE, we do not have the ability to send that electronically back to you to have an update included or more information added to the work affirmation. So it must be complete on your end before you submit it. We no longer and have not used the 338P form. Those of you that were around since before 2011, when we used paper applications, a 338P form, paper form had to be completed and submitted to PDE. We no longer use those since 2011 in TIMS. It's all to be reported electronically through the system. Now, what is happening is if an LEA or the educator does not include all of the work information and we need additional years of service reported, we have no way to backtrack this electronically. The evaluator will contact the educator and ask them to obtain the old 338P form, which includes all of that updated information. So if you have an educator that you know you completed that work affirmation and submitted it to PDE and they're coming back and asking you for the 338P form, it's because that information was not complete. And in that instance, we do still have to use that old 338P form to submit that work experience. Other than that, we do not use the old forms any longer. There's a lot of confusion also on the percentage of time. The percentage of time, if it's a full-time employee, the percentage of time worked will be 100% of the week and 100% of the day. If they are a half-time or a 50% employee, it may be that they are 50% of the week and 100% of the day. Or maybe they're 100% of the day, but only 50% of the week. So percentages of the week, if they're full-time, which in most cases they are, it's 100 and 100. We know that's a little bit confusing, and if you do have anybody that you have question on, you can reach out to us to find out more information. But under the comments section, what also is helpful is if you have somebody who worked a partial year, say they worked only like 93 days, instead of giving us dates, which makes the evaluator have to calculate, and we don't know holidays and so forth, down in the comments section, feel free to put an actual day by year. So if in 1920 school year, they worked 93 days, consecutive days, it doesn't, so we're not talking about substituting, we're talking about experience that counts for their level 2. So if it's a long-term sub that worked more than 70 days, that time does count. But put that in the comments section, maybe like they worked 93 consecutive days that year in that position. So any information that you can add to your work affirmation is helpful to the evaluators to be able to process that application quickly and efficiently. Also, when you are looking at a work affirmation, there may be multiple work affirmations from the past that you are not seeing, that were not completed. We recommend that when you do the work affirmation, that you search for all submitted work affirmations for that educator by searching by their PPID number. Oftentimes, you may only see one work affirmation on your dashboard, but there might be 2 from the past that were never completed, and they will cause the application to get stuck, and it will be waiting for those old work affirmations. So what is always a good rule of thumb or practice is to search for that all work affirmations by the individual's PPID. Again, this is helpful to move the application forward in a timely manner. Under your work assignments, make sure, especially in the area of special ed, that you don't, if an individual only holds a special ed pre-K 8 certificate and you choose special ed pre-K 12 as their work assignment, that will mean the evaluator will have to contact you as the LEA or the educator and request specific information on the grade scope, because they're not certified for above 8th grade of special ed. So be specific and accurate if you're entering information in on the work assignment, to make sure that there is no question that the individual was working on their certificates and not outside of their scope. I believe I might have hit on everything that I'm looking at for work experience. If you have any questions, there will be time at the end for work if you have any questions about work affirmations. Next. Now we're going to talk about emergency permits, which again, CSPG has 13, has a lot of information on emergency permits, but we want to go down and go over some basics that we still get questions on. You have guest teacher emergency permits. You may be contracting with your local LEA, an IU, or a private agency. These are a private agency cannot request emergency permits. Only public school entities, which would be like an IU if the IU has a guest teacher program, or an LEA, but individual private agencies like Source for Teachers and ESS, they cannot request emergency permits. These can only be requested by an LEA, and these do not pertain to or apply to long-term substitute teachers. Next. So responsibility for substitute educators. So if you're contracting with a private agency such as Source for Teachers or ESS, it's your responsibility to request the emergency permit. So in this case, it's your responsibility to make sure that the individual has a bachelor's degree, that the individual, if they are already PA educated or educators, that their certificates are active and valid, you are requesting the emergency permits for these individuals, and you need to verify that information is correct and valid before you request that emergency permit. Anything that you're requesting, you should be validating all that information before you submit the request. Next. Now, a typo 6, and these can be the ones that you're requesting, either an initial typo 6, or maybe you're requesting reissuance of a typo 6. All of that information is kept in-house. In other words, it's kept at your location in their HR records, their bachelor's degree, and their background checks and all that information that you get, except if it's flagged for an audit. It can be flagged for an audit for different reasons. It could be a GMC issue, or it could be that they are foreign educated or foreign, they're not US citizens. These are normal applications that have to come into PDE to go through the audit. However, in just a regular typo 6 application that does not fall under the GMC or foreign, the system is set that for every 100 to 200 emergency permit requests, typo 6, that are automatically uploaded, there will be one that will be pulled to come into PDE for an audit. And that does not mean that that individual has done anything wrong or that the school has done anything wrong. It just means that it is their turn. They were 100 or they were number 200. So in that point, all information has to be submitted to PDE, just like you would gather. So we would need their bachelor's transcript, and also the 338G form that is on our website under fees and forms should be filled out with the background questions. Now, when someone applies for their initial permit, they're answering those background questions right within the application. But if you have a group that you're just automatically renewing every year, you need to give them the 338G form that they answer the background questions every year, because those can change from year to year for an individual. We can't just assume that their answers are all no because they were 2 years ago. That's something that needs to be obtained every year. Also, when those come in, we will review those, and basically if there's nothing that we see that we need to discuss with you, the person's 06 is approved. And it does not mean that the person didn't already get 6 typo 6 emergency permits already that were not flagged. It just means that, maybe that 7th one is that one that's the 100th on the list, and their documents need to be sent in. So there is a lot of confusion. We usually have people get upset if they have to submit their documents after they've been a substitute for 5 years. But the purpose of that is to audit, to make sure everything is being done correctly on the LEA as well as the educators side of the application. Next. And we realize there's a lot of issue right now in getting substitutes. We're getting a lot of questions, and we're getting a lot of questions on using student substitutes. And so I thought it would just be good to take a minute and explain what a student substitute is under Act 86. It is someone who is currently enrolled in a teacher certification program at the undergraduate level, and they must have 60 credits, and you can use them for 10 to 20 days only in a school year. 20 days total if they're a day-to-day sub, but if you need them in a single assignment, you can only use them 10 days in that single assignment. The remainder of those 20 can be used in another substitute position, but they cannot remain in the same position for 20 days. Now, we also have Act 36, where many of you are familiar, that's been around a very long time, where when we're coming to the end of the year, we have our seniors that are graduating that are waiting for their certificates to be processed. If they obtain a letter from their program provider that explains that they meet all bachelor's requirements, that they have all testing requirements and program requirements completed, they're just waiting for the processing of their certification. If they present you with that letter, you can use them as a substitute to the end of the school year. These are all listed in CSPG 13 under locally issued. In these cases, there is nothing that you submit to PDE. These are all things that are kept and documented at the district level in their HR records. Now, say you have someone who is a student, go back to 86, you have someone who is a student in a certification program at the post-bac or master's level. Act 86 does not pertain to these individuals. For those individuals that already have a bachelor's degree, they are allowed to substitute in your district by getting them a type 06. Because they have the bachelor's degree, you can request a type 06 for them to substitute in your district in between taking their classes if they're in a program. Act 86 is only for those students who do not have the bachelor's degree yet. These are undergraduate students. So we have a lot of questions about individuals that are students in a program at a master's level. Do they fall under Act 86? No, they do not. They already have a bachelor's degree, which now qualifies them for another type of an emergency permit, such as type 06, an 01, or an 04. Next. So we're going to go over the requirements for certificates for type 01. First of all, I wanted to explain that there are no expedites for emergency permit applications. And there are no expedites because these are already given priority. Emergency permits are given priority over every other type of application submitted into the system because we realize these are urgent matters. So we do not expedite one district's emergency permits over another. They're all as important to us as the next. So that is why we do not expedite. A long-term sub-emergency permit is a type 01. The only requirement to get that initial type 01 is a conferred bachelor's degree. There's no specific credits that we review to determine if they qualify for that type 01. The only thing we validate is they have a conferred bachelor's degree. The types of positions that you would request a type 01 are listed there: a new position, a resignation, retirement, termination. These are full-time openings, and therefore you would be requesting a type 01 to put someone in there with an education obligation. In other words, they are going to be looking at entering in and completing a certification program to remain in that position. Next. It is the LEA's responsibility to discuss the requirements for the emergency permit reissuance with the applicant. Unless we have all of this information on our website under CSPG 13, but these are new educators, and you should be sitting down and discussing what is their responsibility to get this reissued for the following year. And in CSPG 13, as well on this slide, we do break down the credit requirements. They are required to enter into a teacher certification program, not just take random credits. They have to actually enter into a program and complete the program credits at the rate that we explained below. Now, you know and hearing a lot about Act 136. There are a couple things that I wanted to talk to you about Act 136. Act 136 allows us to reissue a type 01 permit for the upcoming school year, if the individual that was on the Typo 1 this past year was not able to take the tests due to COVID, or were not able to complete the required credits because of COVID. And let me explain that a little bit further. If you have an individual whose program was done and they only needed to test, the credits, the tests were unavailable last March to probably the summer. At this point, and from that point on, most and all tests have been available. So you're requesting a waiver to the requirements based on testing probably is unlikely, because these tests have all been available either at home or on site at the Prometric centers since last summer. So only maybe in a very rare instance, we do understand that maybe some of the foreign language tests were not available till recently, but all other tests have been available. So it would be unlikely that you would be applying for a waiver based on testing. You might, the most that we could see that you might be able to request the waiver is if an individual could not complete all of the 9 credits because of COVID. The programs themselves have been operating the entire time, either online or in person. The only thing that may have happened is that one of their classes was canceled because of COVID, and maybe they were only able to get 6 credits in their program versus the 9 credits. You might have the unfortunate circumstance where an educator was hospitalized because of COVID and unable to complete a course because they were unable to attend class at that time. So these are the cases where an individual could not complete all of the credits or of the 9, or if it's 6 for their first year, based on a COVID circumstance. It would not just be because they did not enter into a program. The programs have all been running, but perhaps they were unable to complete all of the required credits for that reissuance. There is the waiver form, the attestment form under the fees and forms section of the website that the individual would have to complete, verifying that they were unable to complete those 9 credits. And they would fill that out and submit it with their transcript, say they were able to complete 6 of the credits out of the 9. Submit that with the transcript. And this is an individual basis. It's not the waiver that you could apply for this school year that covered all of your educators on a Typo 1. This is in an individual basis. So the individual would complete that waiver attestment and include that with the transcript, and then that would be taken into account of why they did not meet those requirements for reissuance. Also, I have one more detail. If you're a CTC, please listen up to the next part of the Act 136 announcements, and that is that Act 136 waived the basic skills tests up until June 30th of this summer, 2022. What that means is if you have somebody, 2021, I'm sorry, back up. I'm on to the next date. It's this summer, June 30th, 2021. I'm correcting that information. So if you have an individual that has not been able to pass their basic skills test, they have all other requirements met, and they've been on an exceptional case permit this past year because they needed some additional time to pass those basic skills tests, this is their time to apply for their vocational 1, their instructional 1, because all applications complete that we receive before June 30th, Act 136 has waived those basic skills tests. We will not be issuing exceptional cases this year because these individuals are actually having those tests waived. So please pay attention if you have any educators in your CTC that are on an expired intern or exceptional case permit to get their vocational one or their career and tech one. Their application needs to be submitted into TIMS and gone through their program provider and be in PDE to evaluate before June 30th, 2021. This is a huge waiver of those basic skills tests and will be a tremendous help for those educators that are struggling with those final basic skills tests. And we're talking about basic skills reading and basic skills writing. We are not talking about basic skills math. That is not considered a basic skills test for a career and tech credential. Next. Type 04 long-term emergency permits are issued for a temporary position, a temporary opening. The requirement, again, to get this type 04 is a bachelor's degree. That's it. This type 04 can be reissued 2 times in the same subject area to the same individual. So you can only request a type 04, for instance, for secondary biology for the same person twice. Beyond that, if you still need them to come back and now you need them a 3rd year to fill in another opening, they need to be put on a type 01 and enter into a certification program. Next. I'm going to go over it. I know you've heard about this by this time. There's still a lot of confusion about Act 82 and Special Ed Pre-K 12. I'm going to go over these details again because it's very important, the changes that are coming up. Special Ed Pre-K 12 certificates can be issued starting January 1st, 2022. Special Ed Pre-K 8 and 7 to 12 will be continued to be issued up until December 30th, 2021 and beyond for those that are continuously enrolled in their program. So you might have some that are not finishing up their program yet by December 30th, 2021. Those individuals, according to Act 136, that are continuously enrolled in their program, pre-K 8 or 7 to 12, will still be able to get their certifications past December 30th, 2021. These initial applicants will still be required to have a content area coupled with the special ed subject area. So these individuals can still not be issued these subject areas as a standalone certificate. Okay, these still need to be coupled with the content because that is covered under that regulation. Only the new Special Ed Pre-K 12 certificates can be issued as an initial or standalone certification. It no longer has to be coupled with a content area certificate. Next. Educators certified in Special Ed Pre-K 8 or 7 to 12 will still be able to request the opposite grade scope of Special Ed by either testing or program requirements. So if you have an individual, for instance, that has the Special Ed Pre-K 8 and they want the Special Ed 7 to 12, they can take the tests and apply for that as a test add-on. That is called an expansion. Or they can go back to their program provider and complete the courses without testing. That is also called an expansion. They do not need the content area for the opposite grade scope that they're adding on. And that's why it's called an expansion. It's an expansion of the special ed certificate that they currently hold. Next. So just a few updates. There were a lot of issues, payment issues with Chrome and Safari when you were going to apply for an emergency permit. That issue has been resolved for the most part. We still are seeing outlying issues when somebody goes to pay in Chrome or Safari, not near as many. Issues are occurring, but there are still issues. So we do still encourage that when you are working in TIMS, that you are working in Internet Explorer or Firefox. It is still the best systems to be using in TIMS in order to avoid errors. Also, when you are logging in as a TIMS provisioned user, and if we could go to the website, to that page, we recommend bookmarking. If you keep the page bookmarked, we recommend that you start at the level, you're going to go in under certification, right on this page. No, that's good. It's good where it is. I'm sorry. If you want to go to the TIMS, we recommend that you bookmark this page. And why that is because we often have announcements regarding TIMS. TIMS might be down for maintenance. TIMS, we might be having issues, login issues, that we have to take the system down for a day. About a month ago, I think we were down for several days that there were issues. And that information gets posted on this page. If you don't bookmark until the login screen, you're going to miss any announcements that we put on regarding TIMS. So we recommend that if you're bookmarking a page, this is the page that you bookmark. We realize that you're going to have to do another extra click or two, but we don't want anybody to miss any important announcements that we will be bringing to your attention about the TIMS system. So that is another tip that we want to recommend. And also the Keystone login issues. If you have any Keystone login issues, we recommend calling the number that is on the login screen. We are not IT. We do not have the capability of walking through a lot of those issues with you. And we recommend calling that number first and seeing if the IT help desk, it's a Keystone IT help desk. And they are able to resolve 90% of your login issues by calling that number. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, I realize we've gone way over because we got a late start, but the last screens are basically how to contact us. If you want to email us because it's difficult to get through on the phones, we do have the phones open all day, but it's very difficult to get through. We recommend the email to the EdCert questions. And then there's just a few more screens that give you some other contact information. So again, I apologize for the rocky start we got. I thank you all for attending today and for passing this information along. So if you have any questions regarding anything that you heard today, I will try to field those questions now.
Renee, we have two questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
One is regarding work affirmations. What is recommended approach for past teachers who are no longer employed and files are not available?
What I recommend in that case is still completing that work affirmation. I know you won't have the information on, you know, their position there, but under the comments section, that is where I would put that you do not have any information any longer on this individual, and then submit that to PDE, because as long as that work affirmation is hanging out there, the application will not move forward. So by completing the information that you have, we do recommend, there's a good moral character question there. We suggest that you do not answer no to that question, because that automatically puts that application in a GMC review. So I think you have to answer yes there, and you can just put that you don't have any, you know, any current information, but at least it won't put it down the route of having a GMC question. So complete everything that you have to the best of your ability when you are in there, and submit to PDE.
Okay, the next question is, does Act 86 require the student to have continuous coursework? For example, if the student is taking a semester off or stopped coursework for another reason, are they able to sub?
No, I think in that it indicates they're continuously enrolled. So if you have someone who took a semester off, they're not continuously enrolled.
Okay, and will the PowerPoint presentation be made available? I missed much of the beginning.
Yes, it will be available. We're going to probably try to get it on our side or the
We're
IU.
hosting a recording of this. It will be the PowerPoint itself will be available, and we will have a meeting for people who are unable to attend.
Okay. There's going to be an email coming out that's going to indicate that it's going to be on the website, and that we're going to be redoing the presentation. So that should be on the website, hopefully. The PowerPoint as well.
Okay, we have guest teachers emergency certified by an IU as day-to-day subs. I want to use them this summer for extended school year program. Can I get them a type 06 for the summer?
I think the emergency permit is valid. A type 06 is valid until July the 31st. So that should take in the program. Hopefully. It doesn't end at the school year. They're valid until July the 31st.
And someone was wondering if they could download the presentation as a handout.
The PowerPoint will be available for them to print out, yes.
Great explanation for lapsed versus inactive. Seems simple enough, but I never really got it until today. Seems like lapsed is a bigger deal. Does an educator essentially have to get recertified if their certification lapses?
No, they do not have to get certified. The penalty is that they cannot be currently employed on a lapsed certificate. As soon as they meet the requirements for level 2, you might have an educator, we've seen it, where they don't have the credits completed. So they may need that time unemployed to finish up their credits. And as soon as they apply for their level 2, and we do the review and issue the level 2, they are again on being able to be employed on a valid certificate. On an inactive, that educator can only serve 90 days on that inactive certificate. So that's why they cannot be on a contracted position either if they are if they are in inactive status. So both of those, the lapsed cannot teach at all, and the inactive can substitute for 90 days. So that's a difference as well.
Okay. Another one here is we use work affirmation percentages for subjects taught. For example, 40% math and 60% science in 1920. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
As long as they hold those certifications.
Right. As long as they hold, I have Wendy Belts, who is one of our evaluators, sitting here with me as well to answer that. She does level 2s. She's an expert at level 2. So she looked at that and said, yes, that would make 100% of the day. To break it down like that is perfect. And she said, as long as they're certified in both math and science, that is a perfect explanation right there.
Okay. Our 06 emergency cert substitutes complete a new application on TIMS each year. So are they still required to complete the paper 338G?
No, as long as they're answering those background questions every year, that is perfect. But a lot of schools do automatic uploads for their type 06 permits, and those individuals never go back into TIMS and answer those the GMC questions. So if yours are going in and doing that every year, they are responding to those questions every year. That's perfect.
Okay, another one is I send questions through TIMS site and they do not seem to get a response. Is that monitored or is there a better email elsewhere?
If you're sending them through the message center in TIMS, let me take a quick minute to explain what that is. Those messages that are sent through the message center are only answered or reviewed at the time that the application is assigned to an evaluator or specialist. Before that time, they are attached to that application, but they are not responded to until the application is reviewed. So as long as that application is pending documentation or ready for review status, no one is reviewing that message center. So in that case, we recommend emailing the ra-edcertquestions@pa.gov. That is the account that is monitored all day, 5 days a week, and that's where you'll get your quickest response.
Great. One last question here. Since 04 emergency certificates can only be reissued twice, does it matter if the person has a multiple year gap in between his or her 04 certificates and she is subbing for a different teacher?
That's basically why you want to use a type 04. You might have somebody on a type 04 for biology, and then, for a year, and that individual is coming back, so they were just a temporary fill. And then maybe 5 years from now, that biology teacher went on a sabbatical, and you need to have that same person come back in, that they can get that second type 04 5 years later. That would be the second one. So, or you might have 2 biology teachers. You might be filling in for one biology teacher 1 year, and 2 years later, or even the next year, filling in for another biology teacher. It can only be issued 2 times for the same subject area, but it does not matter the gaps of the years in between, or that it's for 2 different teachers. No.
And that's the end of the Q&A here.
Great. We thank you for participating in the webinar, and you can look for that information to be posted on our website shortly. And if you have any additional questions, like I said, feel free to email the ra-edcertquestions@pa.gov account.
Thanks, everybody.